Welcome to United and Independent. We're more significant than ever before. Bigger than the Democrats, bigger than the Republicans. But it's not enough to just be registered. It's time to take action. Our goal on this show is crystal clear: to educate, motivate, and unite. We're going to show you the incredible position and power you hold right now, and what you can achieve by standing together. We're not just talking politics, we're making a difference. This is United and Independent. And now your host, Richard C. Ginnity.
Good evening. Tonight, our topic is really about where this program and this focus on political independence is going to go. You know that since the beginning, I had created a hypothetical ticket. And all the people that I possibly thought would have been qualifiers for the hypothetical ticket, which would have been one Democrat and one Republican, have refused the advances of No Labels, which is also a group that was looking for a combined ticket, if you will. Now, as of last week, No Labels says they're not going to have a ticket. And so there was quite a bit of attention by the press about that. And I'm going to say a little relief of both parties, primarily the Democrats, but that they thought that this hypothetical ticket in No Labels case was going to be a real ticket with a real, be on the ballots in a number of states. You feel that there was a bit of relief because at least the Democrats thought that the No Labels ticket would detract more from them than Trump. Okay, I really don't know that for sure, and I might even question it, but that's what there is. So, the question is it over? And I'm going to argue, no. Okay, because I don't want to go back not being a podcaster. No, I think there's good reason. Because I see the effort that I put in and the role of political independence and the role of having the potential to have a third way, Democratic, Republican, and an independent ticket has a lot of benefits. The primary benefit, I think, at this point, obviously if we came up with some great candidates who would provide something other than the Democratic candidate and the Republican candidate, that would be great if some super person comes out, or people who could just convince enough people to vote for him. But even with that, even if next time we don't have a ticket, even if we don't have at this point a ticket this time, I'm saying that the position of the independents is to give a very sort of subtle but firm indication to the two parties that they're going in the wrong direction. It could be all one party, but in this case, I wholly believe that both parties are extreme and making huge mistakes. We've talked about it, I think, before. Neither candidate at this point is even close to being fiscally responsible, and I'd say they're fiscally dangerous, frankly. A lot of you're suffering right now from inflation. And they refuse to talk about what generally is the driver of inflation. And yet, and I've said in the prior podcasts, there's 4 Fed chairmen that recognize that government spending, overspending, is the primary driver of inflation. Has been, is. But it's not being talked about. Okay? It's talked about this, talked about that, but nobody's out there is just keeping to the truth, which is looking at excessive governmental spending, driving inflation. So I like to encourage those people who are still a registered Democrat, registered Republican, and those people new to the political life, meaning you're becoming 18 this year, okay, or soon to be, or have registered and haven't yet voted for a president. And I'm saying, please entertain the thought of re-registering independent. And you say, well, wait a second, what do I lose? Well, tentatively, they say, well, you lose the opportunity to enter a selection process for the Democratic candidate or the Republican candidate. Well, that could be true, but what I'm saying is there's nothing stopping you from re-registering. Let's say that you tend to like the Democratic candidate in your state or Republican candidate in your state. Not always, but this time you do. So re-register from Political Independent to Democrat or Republican and get your, hopefully, advocate for your choice. Then you go right back. I'm saying it. Stay independent. It's been the press has noted when Nikki was running, and we talked about it, that they thought the independent vote had gone from 36% to something like 43%. And I've heard the 43 number a couple times. I have no clue or no way of confirming that. But even at 36, as I talked about early, it's the largest registered political group in the country. 34% Democrat, 29% Republican. If that goes to 43, those obviously the Republican and Democrat numbers come down. And so they have collective power. And they have collective power if they unified on one candidate or some candidate ticket. They have collective power by indicating that the parties are wrong. The parties are leaving you. And it can be leaving you in a lot of issues. I won't say there's only one, but it's enough for you to say, let's weaken the control of the Democrats and Republicans on whatever we get to choose. And you say, well, and I, of course, would argue that in inflation and in government spending, that's one issue I'd love to have a disagreement and a loud voice to saying, we don't need to go there. Inflation is a killer for those people on fixed incomes, for those just starting out life. It's just really hard to argue for inflation. And yet that's exactly what both parties are producing. Okay, so then let's talk about other things that so you can say if political independence group increases, and you can choose a starting point 36 or 43, whatever you want to do, but that increases 3 or 5%. Everybody's going to notice it. And both parties are going to notice it because all of a sudden, the majority of our voters are saying, I don't want to be a Democrat. I don't want to be a Republican. I'm not saying you all disagree with everything either party is encouraging or backs, but it's not enough. There's too many holes in what they're backing, too many things that you say, that's crap. That's just not me. That isn't going to work. Isn't working. And you continue to back something that has, I think, I'm not sure everybody would agree with it, woke doesn't work in my opinion. And on the Republican side, to deny Ukraine support, it's un-American to me to say that. And Biden's on his side, it's un-American not to support Israel. Our greatest and best ally in the Near East. There's nobody close. There's nobody close as dependent as them. Nobody close who would like and are pretty much in lockstep with generally our interest and generally keeping peace in the Near East on a consistent basis. And yet we're attacking them like they were the communists or something. So this is your chance. I know you're saying, well, I won't have anybody to vote for. I agree. If there's no ticket, what can you do? What you can do is keep registered as independent. Again, if that grows, they're going to have to come to you. They're going to have to come and say, why? Why are we getting this growth? And that is your chance to tell what's bothering you. Tell them if you're a Democratic-leaning independent, tell them what's bothering you in the Democratic world. If you're a Republican-leaning independent, tell what the Republican Party is not addressing. Why you're going away. I'm never even sure I've heard, and it's so strange it isn't, why all these people who were Democrats are no longer. Why all these people who were Republicans are no longer. That should be the hot topic if I'm those two parties. But they're not. They seem to ignore it. And so this is where you can continue to participate. And as I see it, if the parties were working well, we wouldn't have 43 or 36% independents. Might be 5 or 10, 15, whatever. But we wouldn't have the numbers we have. The numbers saying that collectively, 43% are saying we don't want to be in a party. Now, not necessarily the same party. And so that is really an important thing that is not being identified as far as I can see and hear. And that's an important question. That should be on Washington's hit list, should be on the presses. But the press isn't asking those questions either. You kind of wonder why. Well, one way I know, because who's paying them? Democratic Party is paying them? The advertisers are going there? What we need is advertisers to say, well, really, it's the independents audience I'd like to address. Do you hear that? I don't hear, Nike saying, I want to I want to have some voice in that group. They will. Guarantee you, they're not stupid when it comes to spending money on marketing and trying to get to and having a voice there. It just hasn't got a lot of attention now. We keep increasing that number. And again, I emphasize to you, I'm not asking you to vote one way or another. What I am asking is just change your registration and see if we can't get change, hopefully positively, for that. But I can't believe it won't be positive. And it can be only a one-timer. Because if your voice is heard and the Democrats react and pull back toward a more central position, a more traditional Democratic ticket, and the Republicans come off of Trump's era and come back to the more traditional Republican, we may never have a reason to have that large of political independence again. That isn't bad, but keep that in mind as, in fact, a check. A check on both parties, in any party, if there's a third party ever came along. But right now, it's a two-party contest right now. But that is a way of keeping it alive, of keeping the choice of indicators that it's not working. So it doesn't sound like a lot. It says it's not electing anybody. And that's true. I wish I could say it's not or false, but it's true. But a message is going to hit when their numbers keep going down. So even though you say, well, I'm probably going to vote Democratic or I'm probably going to vote Republican, I agree. But the louder the independent group grows, the more importance will finally get to both parties to say, gosh, we don't have that many, we used to be 28% and now we're 24. We used to be 34%, now we're 29. Why? Okay? And they're going to say, well, it's in the independent. So why are we losing it? If they're not asking their questions, they're not doing their job. So you can have a chance to really create havoc in one sense, if you want to talk about havoc, but more importantly, attention. and you will determine your own way of communicating that attention. But collectively, you become very, very powerful. And from my standpoint, we should have 80% independent, okay? Because then they've got to ask why. Because they just want the power. And they will call black as white to get that power. Okay? They will change upside down to get that power. I know that sounds, oh no, they're principled. No, they're power people. That's my position that we're talking about Washington. It's all about power, baby. Because power can get the money. Okay? You have enough power over, let's say, education, trucking industry, whatever industry you want to talk about, then the money will come there to try to influence that. You say, well, that's the lobbyists, they're horrible. No, they're coming there for their self-interest or self-protection. Okay? Both are not unnatural. Okay? And if you think that's going to go away, you're crazy. Think a law is going to change that? Crazy. Okay? They are going to find a way to influence decisions made in Washington for their own self-preservation, for their own advancement, all, if you say, selfish reasons. But on the other side, if you're working for one of those companies or one of those industries, you'd like to have a job too. You may not be leading the charge. You may not be president, may not be vice president, maybe not head of the law department or their legal department, where perhaps the people who are trying to influence Washington reside. But you're down on a factory floor, you're a salesman, somebody. You want a job. You've bought a home, you're making advances in life. You want a job. And so when they're making advances toward that, and they're legal, let's say they're all legal advances in the sense of, they find a way to legally contribute to various senators and House members who are influential in their industry. You're pulling for them too. I mean, I haven't ever seen, maybe I just haven't seen it, that 80% of a certain industry was yelling at the people in Washington for lobbying. Now, they may not yell for them, but they sure in hell don't want their industry to go disappearing, poof, by I'm going to say stupid law that got through and got passed because the lobbyists weren't informing. Because part of the purpose of lobbyists is to inform the congressman and the House about the effects or about the realities of their industry. We elect these people, and there's no way that we're electing a person that can cover the amount of topics they were asked to, in fact, rule over. They might be very bright people, and a lot of them are bright people, but take it, any industry you want to talk about, and to be really knowledgeable, you need help. And their aides generally are coming out of the schools. They're not knowledgeable. They don't, a 30-year engineer, a 30-year general manager of any company you want to talk, don't say, well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to go Washington and I'll try to be an aide to somebody. Doesn't happen that way. Look around the aides. The aides are 26, 28, 30 years old. Now, I'm not trying to knock their intelligence and their drive and everything else, but to be really knowledgeable about the nuances in an industry, you probably have to spend 20 years there, okay? And that's what's not in Washington, is a group, when you think about all the industries that we are involved in, and I could list 20 now, but there are probably 150 that are, important industries, critical to the state, critical to us, critical to the way products move around, information is gathered, et cetera, et cetera. And that just is not in Washington. It can't be. So the job on the positive side, the people that go to Washington try to influence. Some of them are, and no doubt, they're trying to cover their portion of that industry. I agree with that. But the basic notion of educating the new committee members, how many new congressmen, new senators come in? Every 2 years, there's a vote on House of Representatives, and they have to go to committees. Now, are they knowledgeable? Because they're selected by committees. They don't look at their background largely and say, okay, you should be on commerce. You should be on defense. You should be on this or that. Now, they're assigned primarily not because they're knowledgeable, but because that's where they fit. They have other people that said they're more powerful. They deserve to be on this committee or that committee. And so they have to educate those new people. And for those congressmen who are changing their committees, they have to educate them. Because it's not that they're dumb. They really aren't. It's just damn hard to know an industry. Now, again, I was a CPA for 35 years. I had a lot of clients, but I didn't pretend to know in detail the industries that I was doing their taxes for. I didn't have to because I was dealing largely just the numbers from those industries. But if you told me how did they do that, I couldn't say. And that's what my job was, 60 hours a week for 35 years. So there's no way that a congressman or a senator, when you're talking about multiple industries, multiple companies, and international, again, hello, those people who are a significant part of their business is outside the United States, you tell me that without the influence of educators like the lobbyists, if you will, that these people can have any sense of knowledge, of really understanding it? It's impossible. So, going forward, I wanted to sell you, if you will, the concept that political independency has a future. Yes, it looks like we won't have a candidate, okay? But it has its place. I encourage you to do it. And remember, you can change any week you want to be a Democrat if you're so certain, or hopefully you'll say, well, in this case, I want to be on the Democratic candidate side. And this time, I want to be on the Republican candidate because I agree with what their position is. And that really changes the ball game and makes us not, I would frankly like to see very few people who only vote Democratic or only vote Republican because in my gut, we can argue about all the positions they take, but I'm convinced now with what we've got that God help us, they're wrong in many cases. Biden was wrong on the border. Trump is wrong on Ukraine. And so, as far as I'm concerned, it would be better for us to have a massive independent group that would select the best answer as they see it, issue by issue, okay? And let people know, and people should be asking them all the time. They're not being asked, because that is the majority, or soon will be, of all the voters in America. And that's where they should be getting the press, the questions, the surveys, whatever. So, all right. Going forward on our podcast, obviously, and I said this before, we no longer have an independent candidate. So my mythical ticket is no longer relevant. But as you recall, there were 4 issues in my mythical ticket had to address. They were education, the debt, Ukraine, and the border. Those issues haven't gone away. So our podcast will concentrate trying to address those 4 issues. And they're live, they're not going away, and we'll keep going on those 4 issues. So that's what you'll be finding out, and I'll try to remind you each time why we're sticking to that. And the one that absolutely frosts me right now is Ukraine. Ukraine didn't ask to be invaded. As far as I know, they didn't attack Russia. They didn't do anything. But they are a recipient of hell. Okay? Cities, people. And you talk about indiscriminate. Right now we're blaming Israel for being indiscriminate in the Palestinian war compared to the Russians? God help us. Okay? So, why Trump, in this case, is abandoning him to reunite with Russia, to make Russia a winner in this game? I just shake my head. It's so un-American, so anything. And yet it's reality. And you say, well, that's just one. So if we continue with Biden, we should be okay there. Well, not really. Biden is holding up, and so are the Republicans, holding up all the help that Ukraine needs to keep surviving. And if you don't believe that, what is it? Right now, the Russians have something between, I've heard 7, I've heard 8, I've heard 10 times the amount of artillery than Ukraine has. And that means 10 of those large shells are coming at Ukrainians to one they send the other way. And part of that reason, which I just caught in the last 2 weeks, is apparently, and you're probably aware, that the Ukrainians have been quite effective in launching long-range drones against some military-oriented targets in Russia. And they're causing a pain in their ass for the Russians. And more than a pain in the ass, they're inflicting things that are stopping their production. Okay? And that Washington doesn't like. Biden doesn't like it. He wants them not to do that. And because of, well, they say they don't want to, pull the tail of the tiger. Well, yeah, that's a thought. But just think that that Russia and Putin has given indications, keeps talking about their nuclear capability, which is threatening like hell. Okay, and how is the rest of Europe reacting? Well, two of those states, Sweden and Finland, have joined NATO. And that means the NATO group is combined, that they will defend each other and support each other in that group. And that's great. And that's a loss to Putin. Putin doesn't mention it, but that's a loss. He's also the Ukrainian Air Force, or, well, I guess Navy probably, have chased the Russian fleet back into their Russian harbors, and they're not coming out. And they, by so doing, have created a path for Ukrainian wheat and products to start going out. Not start, but they've been going out for 6 months at least. And that's bringing relief and dollars and jobs back to Ukraine. And then you say, well, gee, we're not going to give them support. We're not going to send, this bill has been tied up for, 6 months? And they said, well, it's just too much money. But if you realize that, and I've heard this figure, now do I have an exact figure? No. But do I have heard this number several times? That over 40 to 60% of those dollars given to them for the purpose of of rearming, resupplying their military comes back to us because that's where they buy it. So any thought that, oh, wow, we've got $60 billion is too much, we should do it here. It is working here. Not all of it, but a significant amount of that dollars is coming back, and that's employing Americans. And it's also, and I've mentioned that, I can't scream hard enough, we have used Ukraine as a military lab for our military products. One of those things, which I just saw over the weekend, was Ukraine has rejected most of the drones that we create because they didn't turn out to be all that good. And our answers are the people who are creating those things. Well, we didn't know it'd be that hard. We weren't prepared for the electronic response. Well, they sure in hell should have been. Okay? I mean, what would they? Why wouldn't they? So we aren't getting that business. You know who's getting that business? China. They're buying their parts and supplies from China. So think of it strategically for us. We just got a wake-up call in drone technology, which everybody is now recognizing is a significant element going forward in our military capacities, both from the Air Force, from the Navy, to our ground forces. And just that is worth lots of time. It might even be the turnover if we ever had to directly conflict with a China or Russia or Iran. How would you like to go in there and find out all your drones are no good? Talk about how many U.S. people would die in that situation. And we found that out not with one loss of personnel in Ukraine. Not one. If that isn't important enough for you to support Ukraine, then I'm thinking somebody's not thinking here. And I'm going to tell you what is happening here, which we were very fortunate to get involved in. A couple of weeks ago, maybe a month now, I went to a art show that my son organized, or was part of, I should say. He didn't only organize it. There was a presentation of Ukrainian art, but it wasn't really Ukrainian art. It was from a fellow American who went to Ukraine, spent about 20 days there, and he went around to some of the hot areas of Ukraine, and he did have some inside help to get him there. And his role, he's taken it on, is to create art in the country to try to bring some level of joy to the people. Okay? He also brought some art here, and we have recorded him in 2 sessions, and we will, probably in the next month or so, have a podcast just about his efforts. And we've received recently a picture of him who's completed an art on a almost totally destroyed building. But it's uplifting, and it depicts apparently a famous Ukrainian woman violinist, which is well known. And so it's a little bit of a remembrance of what they had and what possibly could go away, especially if the U.S. abandons them. And that's what they're doing right now. So that's going to come. I think you're going to be impressed with this person and impressed what he's gone through. Because he has gone to, well, you may not know, places like Kherson, okay, hot area. Kharkiv, hot area. There's other areas that he's gone to. There are hot names that if you've been following that war at all, you say, oh my God, he's gone there? So it's going to be impressive. I think it's going to be worth listening to it. And it's a different approach to trying to help the Ukrainian people but he's committed to it, and he's not Ukrainian. He's born here. He happens to have met some, and he's being helped, not dramatically, but surely importantly over there. So I hope you look forward to that. I don't have a firm date on that because he's over there, and we're going to try to coordinate when he gets back. And he should be back in about 20 days or so. So it should be within the next month to 6 weeks. All right. We've tried to tell you where we're going and what you can hopefully expect. But I really am imploring you that don't abandon the thought of being political independent, even if you think that you're really mostly a Democrat, even if you are a Democrat, even if you've voted all the time as Democrat, are registered as a Democrat, or on the other side, Republican, always have been registered, like being registered as a Republican. I'm saying take a chance, go independent, not in changing any one vote. You say, go independent and vote all Republican or vote all Democrat. But it gives you the option, and more importantly, is driving the parties to try to address you. Now, most of us who are Republican, Democrat, or whatever else, anybody really ever want to hear your voice? No, they send you surveys all the time, and usually the ones I've got, it's motherhood. Do you like us to be safe? Yes, no. Do you feel that we should be law-abiding? Yes, no. Like, why are they sending me this survey? Okay? Like House of Representatives, we just had a vote to see who is going to be Republican candidate in California. And there was two possibilities. One was a fellow new to the game. He was quite specific as to what he was backing. The other one was a political animal forever. Okay? All he was saying is, I'm for motherhood. I'm always was for motherhood, and I intend to be for motherhood. Never did he address, in the literature I received, a position on a relevant current item. He expects to be voted there. He expects to be voted because he's, in this case, Republican. Democrats, same thing. They expect to be voted because they're the Democrats that they are always represented or addressed are going to vote for without knowing a damn thing about specifically what they are against or for in the current rundown of issues. I think they shouldn't be in. I really think that those people, what are we doing? Why would we elect a person that really doesn't want to tell you what they're doing? They want to keep it loose and goosey. All right. So that's it for tonight. I thank you for your attention, and you have a good evening.
More significant than ever before. Bigger than the Democrats. Bigger than the Republicans. This is United and Independent. And now, back to your host, Richard C. Ginnity.
We have a digression, and that digression was caused by an article that I actually read this morning. And it was in the Wall Street Journal, which I know you'd be surprised that I would address anything in the Wall Street Journal, other than I've done it 30 times already. But the headline said, Musk, Dimon are hyped on AI, but not everyone is on board. But there were a couple things. Well, you know Elon Musk, and you may or may not know Jamie Dimon, but he is the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, which is one of the largest banks in the United States, and probably the world too. Okay, so Elon Musk just recently said that artificial intelligence will be smarter than humans and transform society. Well, that's been said more recently. But it's the timing that he's calling out here, which to me was a little shocking. Elon Musk said, my guess is that we'll have AI that is smarter than anyone by the end of next year. next year. He also said that it will surpass everything we know in 5 years. One of the things that Musk said, which is probably true, AI is the fastest advancing technology he has ever seen. Now, this is the guy who's in 15 years has upset, if you will, turned over the rocketry process from, Boeing's and all those major corporations. So this guy has done lots of things, created Tesla, etc. He has seen technology and evolved it himself. But he's saying that, first of all, it's the fastest advancing large technology he's ever run. And you see it. I think anybody, I know I'm seeing it so much, and I'm a user, certainly not a initiator of that kind of technology. Dimon, chief executive JP Morgan, told Investors Money that AI could be as transformative as some of the major technological inventions over the past several hundred years. Think, he said, of the printing press, the steam engine, electricity, computing, and the internet. And he said, AI might leave future generations work only 3.5 days a week. Now, there's probably a lot of applause out there for the people who are working 5. All right, I can't wait for it. Okay? The question is, what do they do? The question is, who gets paid? Okay? If AI is doing all the work, you don't get paid. If you're not working in most of today's world, you're not getting paid either. So unless we figure out how you're going to exist on 3.5 days work and the pay that's related to that work, there's some big questions here, whether that's a big thing or a great thing or not. And I also think I don't believe it, because there are certainly jobs that AI is creating, different jobs, clearly, but it also allows us to do other things. And there's a lot of tasks in this world that need addressing. And maybe AI will allow us to take on those tasks with less human effort and based upon AI's computing talent. All right. Google's chief executive, and I'll mispronounce his name, Sundar Pichai, Pichai, has said AI could be more profound than the invention of fire or electricity. And a different fellow, and again, mispronouncing these words, Kasola Ventures, his name is Vinod, Vinod, Kasola, Khosla, said within 10 years, AI will take on 80% of 80%. So that's 64% of all jobs that exist today. The need to work in society will disappear within 25 years for those countries that adapt these technologies. Again, if you were 18 and going to college and said, what are you going to major in? And you're going to say, well, why do I care? Because at the time I'm 43, it's gone. Okay? And I don't believe that's true at all. Okay? But that's what these people, and they're not maniacs. They're in that business up to their eyeballs, and that's what they're saying. All right. Even the Japanese are trying to pass legislation to restrain AI, pointing to the rising concern about AI programs U.S.-based companies have been developing. I think U.S. is ahead in the development of that. I'm not necessarily sure we're ahead on the technology that drives that in the computer science and the chips and et cetera. But clearly, you see the adoption all over. Big job change, big people. But Japan says we need to control it. That's an issue that has risen before. The federal government is saying something the same thing. The question is, how do you control it? It's out there. The bird has flown the cage. And I said before, it's you tell me how it's going to be controlled. Specifically, you might be able to control it with enough controls in the United States, but we're talking Japan, or we're talking China, Russia, Iraq, Iran. Good luck controlling them. So now we get to this next section. Is all of this overblown? We have a comments by Gary Marcus, a cognitive scientist who sold his AI startup to Uber in 2016. So again, not a non-informed person. And he says, AI may one day approach a level that it can transform society. But there has to be vast improvements to the approach that level of change. Okay. And again, it's not like me making a comment. It's the guy who's been in the business, sold a business associated with that. And he goes on, it's possible we may make new discoveries and build better AI, much better than we have right now, that eventually AI could be transformed for the good. Okay. But and he goes, generative AI programs currently make too many mistakes, are unreliable, and have a superficial understanding of the world. Those are big statements made by somebody who's knowledgeable against somebody like Musk, who's not dumb. Musk started an AI program back in 2016, and then he walked away from it. So again, you're talking about two fine intellects who are deeply involved in this process. He said, in the short term, it's implausible that AI will approach human intelligence by the end of next year and surpassing all human intelligence in the next 5 years, which is also what Musk has said. He said, he's gone and he backed his words. He's offered to wager $1 million. That's not chicken shit. With Musk, that his prediction of AI becoming smarter than a human by next year turns out to be wrong. Okay? And I would bet with him too. Okay. Besides, if we have kids who can't learn how to read, takes them 12 years before they can read, I'm not sure where humans are going to surpass, or maybe they're going to surpass that, but nothing else. There's also, quote, Angel Vosov, the co-founder and chief executive of Better AI, which is working on AI wine recommendation tool. Wow. Okay. Her comment, AI systems are good at analyzing large data sets and can make predictions or speed up productivity. But they are nowhere near being as intelligent as humans. As a big part of human intelligence is emotional intelligence. And I think most people would nod their head. May not quite understand what the definition of emotional intelligence is, but understand like social intelligence, which is not marked on a test. You know that you've got some people out there that have done very, very well in their lives, being exactly that, really intelligent socially. They connect with people, they get them to cooperate, and they do it through largely their personality. And she goes on, it needs to connect, understand, and respond to human emotions in a way that actually feels authentic and meaningful. I don't think we're anywhere close, and I would tend to agree. Okay. So, the other issue they bring up, which is an issue that I've seen before, is this AI takes a hell of a lot of electricity. And apparently, we do not have that capacity at this point, and they're talking about expanding it. That's great, but it doesn't expand by next year, or it expands, I'm sure, some, but not the quantities that apparently it requires. So I thought it was important that you read this because these people are knowledgeable. It's not a journalist writing this. It's not a podcaster like myself writing this. Okay. But it's rewritten. What is the truth? I can't admit, is Musk right? I don't think so. But to say Musk is wrong when it comes to technology, you've got to, would you bet against Musk? Well, this one guy will. But he's a tough guy to bet against in technology. So I thought you should see this, and you should be conscious of AI if you're not already. Okay, you should be conscious as it affects your children or grandchildren and their education, and watch, because it's going to be. I find it even now when I go to find out about a topic, often which I want to either initially understand or want to get some advanced thought on it, and I find that who's answering me is AI. Okay, so it's a great tool. It's going to make a lot of jobs easier, but it's also, you want to be aware of it. It's not going to, I don't think, take over the world. But if it does push to a 3.5 day, everybody will be applauding a 3.5 day. I just don't understand the economics of that. And so you kind of say, well, okay, I'm only working 3.5 days. That means I have 3.5 to play, okay, or do anything I want. And I don't see how economically we get there. So, okay, that was the article. That was the topic. This will be the end of this digression. And I thank you.
You've been listening to United and Independent. What separates this show from others is that Richard has the background and experience to back it up. You can find detailed information on his background at the website united-and-independent.com. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten something from it. Make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, follow us on social media. Thanks for helping to make a difference. See you next time on United and Independent.